Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman, and I am joined by my wife, Jocelyn Freeman. And today we have a special guest interview to bring you. We know we don't do this very often, so it's special when we do. Both of us are sitting down today with who's become a good friend of ours, Stefanos Sifandos. He's a relationship educator, behavioral scientist, and the author of a brand new book, the real topic of today, Tuned In and Turned On. He spent decades working with men and couples and individuals all around the world. He blends psychology, trauma-informed work, and spiritual development to help people heal patterns that are showing up in their relationships. And today we want to dive in with him specifically, as he is the expert in this area, and why intimacy can't be deepened without the inner healing that's required. And we all wanted to point you to his book coming out on February 3rd, Tuned In and Turned On. So get ready for this episode with him. Let's jump right in. Steph, it's so exciting to have you on this podcast. Three things. It's exciting for me because we've been getting to know you and your wife as friends. I'm excited for the listeners because really being able to get into a topic for them to understand the deepening of their connection, their intimacy, and ultimately the lasting part of love. A lot of that can feel kind of hidden, or people jump to fixes. And so I'm really excited to dive into that for the listeners. Third, I'm excited because this is what your new book is all about. And so I'm really wanting to share with all the listeners that your new book, Tuned In and Turned On, is about understanding their connection, the healing that needs to happen, and ultimately where intimacy and their lasting love comes from. So I think it's going to be a great episode for all of us here today.
Thank you. I really appreciate you both having me here.
Of course.
We know you, and I know you personally. For those that don't know that story and haven't read the book yet, because you open with such an honest and vulnerable story of your own, but a lot of people know you as a successful coach, author, speaker, husband, father. But what would you like to share with people that don't necessarily know what it's taken to now be in that position with your family, with your wife, and with all that you've been able to do now?
Yeah, I'll tell you something. I don't feel very successful in those last two that you mentioned sometimes. Maybe even more often than not, I don't feel very successful as a husband and a father sometimes. That can be quite challenging. But yeah, so I think we all, in my experience, I've been in the personal transformation space for about 25 years. Coaching and supporting individuals and couples and groups of people move through stuckness in their lives, right? Just to sort of generalize it there for a moment. And sort of the core connection to the stuckness is usually unprocessed, unresolved trauma of sorts that lands in the nervous system, that lands in the mind, that is interpreted in a particular way, and then creates a set of patterns that usually keep people and love and intimacy and connection, the things that we really crave, at a distance. I'm no different to that. I experienced some violence growing up, abuse, very dysfunctional family, volatility, a great deal of uncertainty, moved countries a fair amount as well. And that was very traumatizing. It was just very difficult, really, just challenging. And as a result of some of those experiences and many more that I had, I really developed these protective patterns, these survival strategies, which we all develop in response or reaction to something that really hurts. And I was very unconscious to that for quite some time, for the first 3 decades of my life. And as a result of that, caused a lot of hurt and harm to other people, particularly in my intimate relationships, but also to myself. I wasn't living in my own truth. And I had to keep compensating for that. Because it's painful to not live in your own truth. It's painful to pretend. It's painful to hide shame. It's painful to not deal with stuck trauma that lives in your body, in your nervous system, in your mind. And the greater the pain, the greater the pleasure required to mitigate the pain. And I spent many years harboring that and repressing that and suppressing that and running from that, running from myself. And even though I was, coaching and helping people, um, I was really living multiple lives. I wasn't being honest to myself. And as often happens, that came to a head. And there was I think I've had multiple rock bottom moments in my life, and many that I've chosen not to recognize as rock bottom moments and chosen not to embrace. But this particular one, I recognized it, I embraced it, it really landed hard. And that's where I began to transform more my inner world and just started living more. And I don't like to use buzzwords, but I just started living more authentically. I just started living more in a real way. I wasn't lying so much to myself and to others. And that was a process over quite a few years, deep inner exploration, basically practicing the things that I was preaching, but in a deeper way.
What a journey. And I'm curious how that's translated then into your marriage now and being a father. And we'll get into more of like your themes around the book, because I'm sure that also is connected to it. But because you've done that healing, what's now possible for your family?
Yeah, immediately what's possible is more healing, right? And I want to be very clear on what I mean by that. I'm not insinuating that I'm broken or that we're all broken and we constantly have to be in this state of healing. But what being really truthful with myself or being truthful with oneself opens us up to is simply more truth, right? More connection, more possibility. And so what's possible for my family is longevity, right? Is deeper levels of repair, getting to know each other, arguing less, and maybe even if we do argue more at times, because that happens, the ability to repair is more present. You have greater access, I have a greater access to tools and practices that A, are more sovereign, and B, I can bring into the relationship. So what I mean by that is I'm proactive with how I work with any discomfort that comes up within me, maybe impatience or anger or frustration, instead of projecting it onto someone else, i.e. my partner. If shame arises within me, instead of shutting down, I'm able to open to it in faster, not only faster, but in more meaningful ways. I'm able to be more present. So I'm able to be less distracted by the world or by stuff that is happening within me, like the storm that sometimes happens within all of us. And I'm able to harness that or be with it in a particular way, not shame myself through that process. Whereas in the past, I didn't know what was happening. I had very little awareness about what was actually going on with me. At an intellectual level, I did, but I wasn't metabolizing it somatically, which means I wasn't processing it through my body. I wasn't emoting it in a healthy, meaningful way. I wasn't in deeper contact or relational contact with these parts of me. Therefore, how can I be in deeper relational contact with others? So that question, Jocelyn, is go back to it. How's it affected or impacted my marriage and my fatherhood? I think overall in more meaningful ways. I feel in more meaningful ways. We're able to stay in the muck without judging each other or criticizing each other. We're able to extend that, right? Without going into betraying ourselves or being abusive or being mean or shutting down or getting into protective patterns, because we all have different versions of protective patterns, right? So those protective patterns, the onset of those, they take longer, they're delayed. That's really meaningful when it comes to relational conflict, because you're not immediately then going into reactivity and old childhood wounds that surface really quickly.
One of the things I feel like has been in the subtext of what you're describing, without saying it explicitly, is like around intimacy. And when people see that word, hear that word, especially in the context of marriage, I think they immediately think to like being in the bedroom, right? Like they think it's just you're under the sheets and you're getting it on. And I think what's powerful about your work and everything that I've seen, heard, read about you is you're like, that intimacy is really a symptom of a deeper form of intimacy, something so much more honest and raw and real and isn't just physical. So I'd be curious at how you would define true intimacy in a marriage.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's secondary. So the physical sexual intimacy becomes secondary. It doesn't mean it's not a primary importance, but it's secondary to the intimacy that we're touching here, that we're speaking to. And there's various ways to define intimacy, but the intimacy that we're speaking to is a closeness. It's an ability to be seen and to see another with either no or minimal judgment and maximum compassion, right? And so that becomes foundational when you're able to receive in presence your partner, their pain, their version of you in that moment, the qualm that they may have, and to receive that with genuine curiosity, to not be triggered, to not move into hyper defensiveness and into survival mode, to not have a bound up nervous system. And what that all symbolizes is that you're doing your inner work. You know how to regulate yourself. You have a level of resilience that doesn't just take things so personally and it immediately experiences rejection or abandonment and time travels back to when you were 6. And you have a grasp on these things because you're more mature and relational as an adult. That level of intimacy lays the foundations for explosive, wonderful, connected, safe sex, right? When I say safe, I'm not talking about versions of abuse here. I'm talking about deep conscious expansion through the vehicle of sexual intimacy becomes way more pronounced and profound. And so the intimacy that we're speaking to and that we're touching here is safety with each other. You know that you can repair. You know that you can be really honest with each other, not abusive, but honest. And if you were to go there, there's boundaries. There's you trust each other immensely because you're both doing your inner work around that, right? And you've more than likely as a couple in a relationship gone through various gauntlets, have learned from it. That's another thing. Like the intimacy we're speaking to is like a willingness to learn and grow from the choices that we make in relationship, positive or negative, right? And to really get honest with self and say, hey, what I did hurt you. Those actions that I took came from a wounded place. I'm sorry. Here's what I believe. Here's what I can do. Here's what I'm willing to be able to be moving forward. What do you need? Like that kind of intimacy, that open communication. But part of that intimacy is radical ownership, radical honesty, and radical self-reflection and radical willingness to actually want to change. Those foundations of intimacy become very powerful for not only longevity and sustainability in a relationship, but also beauty and wonder and awe in a relationship.
Well said.
Here's what I realize. When any of us and anyone listening hears that outcome is possible, we get so inspired that we just want to move as quickly to that. And I think sometimes that mentality has us step over a few things. Or I think on another hand, depending how we hear it, it can feel very compelling and exciting to have that outcome, but then also maybe too complex to know where to start. So in either case, not to step over the work that it takes or to feel stopped because it's too complex, I love how you break this down into 3 phases. So you can really start with the inner healing, you have the relational healing, and then you have the sacred unity. So I think it'll be really worth stepping through that. So with the inner healing, what does that work really look like? What are some of the blocks? And then we were really interested in, do you see the work or the blocks being radically different for men versus women?
Yeah, I don't know if they're radically different. I think it's human, for lack of a better term, human problems first. But yes, there are definitely some differences in how men and women experience trauma, intensity, relational pain, how they metabolize that, what they do with that, how they act and behave in accordance with that in relation to that. Yeah, there are definitely differences. And so if we look at inner healing as an example, and the book goes into great detail around what this looks like and how we can not so much remedy it, but how we can begin to be in a deeper relationship with it. Because it's not about healing as a finality or as the final frontier or as something that is done and then complete. There are layers and phases to life. I mean, life is ever evolving and ever changing, right? And so it's really about shifting our relationship to a thing that is affecting us maybe negatively or impacting us in a way that is pulling us away from our dreams and desires. and shifting the relationship in such a way that there's greater alignment. It's more conducive to our values, right? And so inner healing is really looking at the parts of our lives that have been hurt and where in our bodies, our minds, our hearts, our spiritual centers are we holding on to that hurt still? And how is it affecting us via our behaviors? Yes, but our relationship patterns and our patterns of thinking and feeling in the world. Meaning, if you experienced violence growing up, or if your parents divorced at an early age, or even in your teens, and see, trauma isn't just the experience itself, it's how we interpret the experience via our nervous system, via our mental models of reality and our models of reality, and then what we make those models mean. And so if you experience intensity, something that comes at you really fast, like, you know, like too much, too soon, too fast can be another way to describe trauma or intensity, right? We lodge that in our nervous systems, in our bodies. Often then what happens is we don't want to experience that again. It's too much. And this could be chronic trauma that happens over years, right? But we want to try and avoid that as much as possible. So we become vigilant to any patterns or anything that's similar to that original thing that we experienced. And then as a result of that, we contract more in our nervous systems. We develop more of a sympathetic response to the world, right? So we're more hypervigilant, we're more alert, we're more mistrusting, right? We keep people at a distance. We may develop a pattern of anxiousness to keep people really close. So we morph ourselves, we people please, just so we can keep people close, even though we don't trust people. But if we go above and beyond and we minimize ourselves and we maximize them, maybe they'll stay. Or we say, nope, people can't trust them, see you later, avoidance. I want to get right away from you. So now all of a sudden I have a fear of commitment. I'm laissez-faire. I'm just like, I'm here, I'm there, I'm non-committal, whatever your protective strategy is. And we have multiple of them. So the first thing is becoming aware of our protective strategies. The second part is awareness with non-judgment. See, there's various layers to awareness. I'll just give you a broad overview of how I see it, and I won't go into too much detail. But awareness without judgment, this is massive. Can you make the life you've lived not a problem? Now, this is a consciousness of no problem, but this is not bypassing by any means. No. This is non-judgment. This is neutrality. Meeting your humanness with, oh, I had a really tough experience, or I had an intense experience. I try to survive. Thank you, body. And all these years, I've reinforced these patterns that actually keep me away from what I really want. That's why I keep attracting, a lady may say, this is why I keep attracting unavailable men, because my father was so unavailable. That's all that's familiar to me. And so that's what I'm pursuing. But the survival strategy is, let me keep trying to pursue the thing that's familiar to me so that I can change it, so that I can impact it, so that I'm finally important enough. I'm trying to give you sort of various examples, right? And so when we meet that part of ourselves with, oh, this is the thing that I've done, and let that settle, bring the awareness into your body. Then you can begin to process it. What does processing look like? Now, this is less about modalities, whether it's inner child work or breath work or Gestalt therapy, or many of the other modalities that exist, EMDR and so forth, right? This is more about, can you experience a sense of empowerment in your body, in your mind, in your heart, where there was once disempowerment? Because most intensity and most trauma, if you like, is I am disempowered. I've given my power away. I've lost it. It's been taken from me. We feel and experience disempowerment, hence the protective strategies, right? So can you experience empowerment? Can you express empowerment and close that trauma loop? And can you learn to then regulate your nervous system, right? Because when we learn to regulate our nervous system, we're telling ourselves that we're safe. Finally, we are safe, right? And when we're deliberately doing that and it's intentional and it comes from us, that's empowerment. So this whole process of inner healing is coming really full circle with these parts that we've been running from. And not saying, hey, these parts are wrong or they're bad, even though that may be scary and they were really painful, but it's part of my life experience, it's part of who I am. That reframing comes later. So that's the sort of in a nutshell, right? That's the inner healing piece. Now what that does, when we get to that place within ourselves where we actually learn to regulate our nervous systems and feel more empowered where we were once really disempowered across multiple areas of our lives, we become more ready for healthier relationship. for healthier intimacy. So we start attracting our counterparts from that vibration, from that mentality, from that level of maturity. And that's not to say that, my wife and I, we got together and we thought, oh, we've done so much inner work, we're going to be great. Man, 4 weeks in, we're fucking in it. Right? We are in it. Literally 4 weeks in, maybe a little longer, maybe like 5 or 6 weeks, but we are in it, And so it's not to say that challenges aren't going to arise, especially when you care deeply and there's real connection there, that sometimes more so. But the tools you'll have and the foundations that you have are raised. Right? The bar is higher for you, meaning that you have more resilience, you have more tolerance to stay in it, not to be a punching bag or to let the other person beat you up, but to stay in it without being triggered and reactive and going back to old protective strategies. And if you're both doing that, you're not getting anywhere, right? That's why continuous arguments keep happening. So I'll pause there. Yeah.
What you just said about the both people doing it too at the end, that is the magic formula for marriage. Like when people ask us, like, put it simply for us, like, what does it really take? It is two people being willing to do their individual work and then get the couple's tools and skills together. And that thankfully is a part of our journey. And so just to share a little bit, since our listeners are so, used to us, have learned about us, I really don't think that we would be where we are now in our marriage if we didn't have that willingness early on. And I thankfully had started my self-development, my healing journey before meeting Aaron. And I was actually in a place where I loved myself. I didn't need a partner. I had worked through a lot of the fears, insecurities, wounds. Aaron was on board with growing. And then this is the part I really want to get to. And it didn't end though, right? Like there's growth and evolution and learning along the way. And then when we became parents, and I know a lot of our listeners, if not the majority, are parents, you might think, oh my gosh, we've been together 10 years. We've done a ton of work on us. But then even new stuff got revealed in becoming parents. And that's normal. I just want everyone to know that. And it's because when you become a parent too, obviously your whole life changes, but I think even old memories can come up that you haven't thought about because you're so present to the parent-child relationship that even some of your old stuff comes up that you haven't thought about in a long time. And then, your nervous systems need different things from each other. And so I just want for anyone who's listening, who's like, okay, I'm tracking with you on the healing stuff. I thought I've been doing that for plenty of time. It's not like there's an end date to it. Would you agree? And then also it'd be great for you to connect it to the next kind of part that you focus on in the book around that relational work. So the individual healing to then the relational work.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I don't think, and there's no stigma attached to healing. It shouldn't be if we're healing by default, there's something broken. It's not like, and maybe we should use other words. We should be using different vernacular and vocabulary around this. Maybe it's not healing per se. Maybe it's making more whole or experiencing ourselves as more whole, or simple change and transformation. We're transient, transformational beings. We're not static, right? And so every new experience, especially experiences that are meaningful, such as having a child or committing to a partner, being married, for example, or going into a business or buying a home or traveling somewhere really unique and it's a big step for you, anything that's scary, that feels uncomfortable, that feels mysterious, that requires a lot of our energy, that we place a lot of mental weight on and we perceive it to be very important, will bring out parts of us that are sometimes going to feel challenged, irrespective of how much inner work we've done per se. So I think that journey is continuous. Why? Because foundationally for me, growth is the prime directive of life. Like that's it. We're here to grow. And words, for me, words that are synonymous with growth are love. And so if we're moving into love, we're taking risk. And so I think it's very healthy and normal for us to continue to grow. That doesn't mean that we have to be doing an ayahuasca journey every week. Integration matters, space matters, and that's also part of growth, right? Like experiencing yourself in a new version of yourself after you've been months doing therapy or months exploring this pattern of yours and you feel that you're relating differently to it now. Like take a break from sort of active inner exploration, but that's also part of growth. Mm. So yes, I resonate with what you've shared. In terms of that inner healing moving into the relational world, I touched on this earlier, and I think maybe say it in a different way as well. This could be useful. Is that inner work is preparation for something deeper. What do I mean by that? A number of years ago, and I've had this experience 2 or 3 times in my life where I've been at a crossroads. It's been a very, very distinct crossroads. It's, do I stay in this world? And I don't mean suicide, although I've been on that ledge as well. But do I remain in this world, or do I literally disappear into the mountains? Like I go into the Himalayas and maybe find myself a master and under his tutelage and just disappear from the world, right? Disappear from this cultural context. And I've been at that crossroads a couple of times in my life. The last time I was at that crossroads, soon thereafter, I met Christine. The decision I made was to be in this world, because I truly believe that intimate relationship was a direct pathway to enlightenment and God. And I touch on this in the book as well. This is sort of like one of the sort of unique, very sharp turns the book takes towards the end as it lays down all these foundations, is that intimate union is a direct pathway to divine intervention with self and to experiencing God in very profound ways. And when the more inner work we do, or the more committed we are just to ourselves, to recognizing our patterns, to being more humble with ourselves, to taking ownership of the way that we behave and show up in life towards ourselves, towards others, the greater we do that with velocity and intentionality, the more open and the more possibility allows itself to be present in relationship. And so what does that tangibly look like? And I touched on this earlier as well. It means that if you're having a conflict, instead of having a conflict from an immature place where you did this and you did that and you're pointing fingers at each other, you're seeking to understand the other. Tell me more about your experience of me. Okay, I hear that you're saying that the way I spoke to you didn't feel good and this is why. What could I do different? Or tell me more, is there more to what you're actually thinking and feeling that you're not sharing? I want you to really share. Like, we get curious about each other, right? And we're able to take it on the chin. Yeah, maybe like what I said earlier around meeting ourselves in non-judgmental ways. Oh, you know what? You're right. I raised my voice. I can see how that would have upset you. Instead of saying, oh, stop being so sensitive. So what if I raise my voice? Big fucking deal. And I've been that person before as well. In my own frustrations, I don't want to hear her frustrations. But when we and again, it's not to say just because I've done that, I haven't done quote unquote enough inner work, right? That doesn't mean that. There is no enough, so to speak, right? There is no maximum and minimum. But what it means is that if that happens, we're human. How can we come back to repair then? Hey, I noticed that I got really defensive then. I'm sorry. You were sharing something. I want you to actually share it fully. I got you. Go for it. Life is learning. Like, just can we learn? Can we learn faster? That's the can we iterate our learnings faster? That's what the biggest companies in the world do. Fail forward, fail fast, and fail frequently.
What's interesting, I mean, I love that. And I also think about sports analogies. I know both of us played in various forms. But even when I think about playing sports, there was like the idea of being the champion, being the best in the city. And then it's like I could choose to practice the things that I felt I needed to become the best or the champion. And I know all these sports documentaries, show that same thing. And that's all good. I think you feel good about your need to grow. The times that suck are when you go play and you play at your own best. And, I play basketball. You have a bunch of turnovers. Like, I was at the effect of losing the game, that it was like sort of my failure. And in that moment, it's almost forcing me to grow. The previous one was like, hey, growing is a good idea because you get to be the best. But then when you're faced with someone else was way better than me,
or you didn't get something right,
and I'm gonna have to. I don't know what this path looks like. Like, what I was doing wasn't enough. And so
Mm.
to bring this to the marriage, I think that's the part in the relational side that gets kind of frustrating, because when I choose when I want to grow, oh, it's a little bit easier, I think. It has a sense of, yeah, that choice, but oftentimes I'm maybe just trying to get certain things done. Things are peaceful. I'm wanting to focus on our daughter's socio emotional growth, our business, keep going forward. And all of a sudden, Jocelyn has a problem with me. And it's like, it's so easy to think, why do you have a problem with me? That's your problem.
Yeah.
And, and like, and that's kind of that similar sports analogy where I have to take it on that I might not be choosing in this moment to grow, but this situation, my partner is reflecting this place where I do need to grow, but I wasn't choosing this path. And I think that's the part that gets sometimes frustrating. That, well, why don't you do your work? Like, so like that's on you, right? And I don't see like that direct path of her reflecting something to me, and then me then choosing to go on that to then open us up to this level of deeper intimacy, of deeper closeness, of openness and vulnerability, and even now better sex, right? It's like that's not how I saw the path opening, but I think there's really this acceptance that that's sometimes how the path shows up. And
Mm.
then and it's easy to like put that on them, like do your thing, like don't bring this to me when, wait, what if that is the path? I didn't think I was choosing it, to our intimacy and our relationship like really getting great. So anything you want to say to that, even transitioning to the unity part?
Well, I mean, I love what you've shared, right? And this is the more self-reflective we are. Put inner work and healing aside for a second, those terms aside. The more self-reflective we are, combined with the more willing we are to listen to the other person's perspective of us in that moment, irrespective of it's right or wrong, right? And the more we're willing to surrender to what would love do now, the less intensity and conflict we have. And the less intensity and conflict we have, the less compounding of intense conflict there
Mm,
is.
mm-hmm.
So by default, the more connected we are, which is the very thing we all want. We all want to be seen and heard and appreciated and respected and loved. You know, we spoke about distinctions earlier about men and women, masculine, feminine, and or masculine, feminine. You know, men really love to be respected and really value being respected and appreciated. Women, generally speaking, really, really value being felt, presence, and heard, right? And so how do we meet each other in these places? Well, we become self-reflective enough, willing enough. We ask questions like, curious enough, like, what would love really do now? Would love shut down?
Mm,
Would love just be defensive and just listen so that they can respond? Or would love just say, yeah, tell me more? Or would love say, I'm sorry? Or would love empathize, you know, like, but it's hard to get to those places when we're stuck in our own pain. That's the point.
mm,
So the more, again, I'm going to come back to this term though, the more inner work we do, more self-reflective we are, the more we take radical responsibility for ourselves. And I use the term radical in front of these other descriptors because it needs to be radical. It can't fucking be mediocre. I've just had done mediocre so much of my life and it doesn't work.
mm,
It's not only will it only get you so far, it will get you, you'll be frustrated where you are. So frustrated, guaranteed. Just check in with yourself. Mediocre doesn't work.
Mm.
You've got to take radical change. You want to experience something radical? You want to experience really deep, meaningful change. You're tired of the same patterns. You're tired of the same arguments. You're tired of the sexless marriage. Like you've got to do something different. It's got to be pronounced. And it starts with you. You've got to take a really strong, I think Michael Jackson said it, man in the mirror. Like you've got to, just a side note, I came across a thing on, I think it was Instagram, just watching an old video of his. Man, he was so talented.
mm.
It's so sad. Anyway, complete tangent. But, you know, Matt he's so talented. But you've got to look in the mirror. And we just don't do that because we don't like what we see.
Mm.
Mm,
Because we only want to look at what's convenient. The parts that we present to the world, the masks that we wear that we think others will like and that we like about ourselves.
Yeah.
But the quote unquote ugly parts, we don't want to show that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not until we embrace all of ourselves. That's why this work is wholeness work, not healing work. Till we embrace all of ourselves, we're going to keep running into these same patterns. They're just patterns. We're going to keep running into them though, because we make them personal as well.
Yeah. It's like the love, the connection, the joy, the intimacy we want requires what you're describing as like shadow work, right? Like doing the work to look at the parts of ourselves we don't want to. And for anyone who has not begun that journey of shadow work, it's just part of it. And that's the piece that, you know, the fantasy idea of relationship, of romantic partnership, of marriage that's shown in rom-coms and TV shows and sitcoms and just all of the messaging of when you're with the right one, you fall in love and it's happily ever after. That's a superficial relationship. That's idealized. And really a marriage that lasts, that's fulfilling, it requires that deep work too. And it doesn't mean there's not fun too. We always want to make sure that our listeners know, like, we're not saying 100% of your relationship is spent like deep work and, you know, you're just like heavy in it, right? This needs to be balanced out too. And maybe this is a good segue in for that third piece, which you call, I want to get it right here.
Sacred unity.
Sacred unity. And so where does the lighter energies come in with that? And talk about sacred unity.
The whole way through. So fun and play and joy. So think about so many of our patterns were formed during that very tender, sensitive time of childhood, during our formative years. So our patterns as adults, the way we give and receive love, the way we trust people, the way we show up in conflict, the way we do relationship, our values, likes, dislikes, belief systems, all of that, the groundwork for that is really laid during our formative years when we're very susceptible to the world around us and we're very self-referential, meaning we make the world about us. So if mum and dad divorce, it's our fault. If I hit my knee and my knee's really hurting, it's my fault. Like everything's us, like we're very egocentric, right? It's not a bad thing. It's part of our development. But if we experience intense experiences, we make them about us. And so we form ideas about ourselves. Self-worth, self-value, self-talk is all a derivative of that. And so often then what happens if many of us have experienced, or a good portion of the population have experienced disharmony, disconnection, pain growing up, it's more difficult to access joy and play and fun. But that's intrinsic to being a child. And so not only are we reparenting ourselves as adults, but we're reinvigorating ourselves. And so from all, you know, if we look at all three stages, if you like, and sacred union is that connection to God and to the divine, but that also then transcends into the sacred union with self, sacred union with our patterns, sacred union with our belief systems, sacred union with our partners and people in our lives. And what sacred union really means is that we're being intentional, we're deliberate, we're aiming, we're willing, we're wanting, desiring to be a cleaner vessel for what's possible, not what's probable. Probability is contraction and fear. We're scared of the world, we're scared of ourselves, we're scared of our power, we're scared of being seen. Possibility is I'm open to the world. I'm going to take that risk and I can do it openly, vulnerably, authentically. But fun and play is at every stage. We have to reinvigorate ourselves because that fun and play. The moment we are in play, we're curious. The moment we are curious, combined with play and fun and joy, we're in a parasympathetic nervous system response. So our bodies are relaxed. We're open. We're spacious. We're not so uptight. We're not hypervigilant, unconsciously looking for the threat. Not everyone's a saber-toothed tiger. Mm-hmm. That's the key. Fun and play and joy actually are the key that unlocks all of this. Mm. And so then how does that show up in your relationship? Well, that depends on you two. Maybe it's travel. Maybe it's going for walks on the beaches. Maybe it's watching funny movies together. Maybe it's poking each other and teasing each other. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's writing each other little love notes, right? Maybe it's wanting to have an extended family, meaning, you know, having children and raising those children. Doesn't mean none of this stuff comes with challenges, right? But you're valuing joy and play. Maybe it's building things together, like literally woodwork or pottery or something. You're like, what's playful for you? I'm not going to tell you. It's not for me. I'm not obviously not speaking to both of you. I'm just generally speaking. Like, it's not for anyone to tell you. It's for you to figure it out. Not even figure it out. It's for you to remember it. It's for you to lean into it. And you'll do that when you're not so much in survival mode, because you're not busy surviving. You're not busy, keeping off people that you think are unsafe or trying to protect your ego, because not that you have an ego death. The ego's not malicious. Well, that's a whole other conversation, but you're just not busy surviving. You can actually thrive, right? Out of survival, out of being in survival mode, and you're into thriving. There's a lot of power in that. Again, empowerment, right? There's a lot of empowerment in that. And then you get to choose, well, I can be in joy. Go and wake up in the morning, oh, my back hurts. But you know what? And this isn't so much a reframe, but it's like, oh, my back really hurts. I'm in so much pain. Well, what's working in your life? And your propensity to go to what's working in your life, to even, find solutions for that back pain, or to resolve that, or to really be grateful, comes from your ability to live in possibility, right? Not probability. And how we do that, again, like full circle, you go back to clearing the clutter of your past and being committed to doing that. And that could be a daily thing for the rest of your life. But if you're committed to that, fun and play and joy enter your world in very, very, with ease and grace,
I'll share an observation after you.
Yeah, I just realized the many different layers that even the title of your book hits on. Tuned in and turned on. And I'm very excited. I want to also invite everyone that's listening to really get a copy for yourself and for another person. This book is going to be available February 3rd. Tuned into yourself, the awareness, tuned into, your fears, your anxieties, your concerns, your worries. Because just like what you said, all of those things are what get in the way of joyful play, a kind of natural sense that we all had as children, but we weren't ready yet because we have a lot of cognitive ability we need to go through. Then there's some traumas. And so really tuning in to the self. And I really will say your book is such a good bridge to the things to do to make this connection to being turned on. Turned on, does that mean very attracted and spicy with your partner? Yes, but I also know that your meaning is turned on to the life that you can live, being excited and enthusiastic and filled with an optimism and being connected to the divine beyond ourselves, because there's so much energy and being turned on to the life that we're here to live. And I know that that's the work really there, right? We're not just born and then we're this ecstatic being that can do lots of stuff and lots of joy. Like, this is the path. Like, there's got to be a path that we walk, which is being tuned into the self, all of the traumas, the pasts. But those aren't heavy things. Like, that's what we're here to do, to be turned on and joyful. And last year, our term for the year was the juice.
Squeeze the juice out of life.
Squeezing the juice out of life. And I know that's what you mean by being turned on. But when you're also that kind of person living that kind of enthusiastic life, you're so attracted to your partner. They're like, the sex is great when you're two very turned on people to the life that you really came here to live. And I know that's what the book is about. I can't wait for people to get more of the strategies from the book.
And I just want to add, since people who listen know that probably my biggest driver is the whole idea of being a cycle breaker. And the thing is if you don't do this work that we're describing, we're talking about here, and the book goes into, your kids will, or your kids' kids will, or it'll just keep going for generations and generations. And so although it isn't the easiest path to be awake, to do the work on yourself, the relational work that shows up, if not you, then who? You're going to put it on your kids because you passed it down, so now they need to do it. Well, maybe they don't do it, so then actually now their kids need to. Like, if not you, then who? And so I say we take on that responsibility, and it doesn't have to be all heavy. Balance it out with fun. And I think that's a really important takeaway from this episode is, like, as you're doing the work, make sure you make space and room for play, for fun. And that's why you can't just be in the daily grind. You can't just be through the Monday through Friday, the work, and then you run the errands on the weekend and you're watching TV every night. Like your souls will just feel empty and low when you're not
turned off.
Yeah, they're turned off. Your souls are turned off, not turned on. So I really appreciate the work you're doing, and I know there's so much we could go into, but everyone listening just needs to read your book and be able to dive into this and do the work. So thank you for coming on.
I
And I
appreciate it
know
very much.
it's going to be available. It's really available everywhere. I've seen
Yeah.
on your site, on Amazon, on Hay House, the publisher site. But is there any particular link you'd want people to be directed towards?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. There's a stack of bonuses that are available right now, and they won't be available forever. And so you can get the book, and again, it will still go through all the conventional means that are convenient for you, Amazon, whatever, book.org, Barnes and Noble, whatever's convenient for you. But tuned in and turned on book.com, and you'll be able to get it there with all those bonuses.
Great. We'll put that link in the show notes too.
Yeah,
but
thank you.
Really appreciate your insight here. And I think it's great just to have another example who is not only a husband, but a father. And so just thanks for the work that you do for your family, for all families.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. Thanks once again for having me.
Yes. All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.